So, very warm welcome again for this weekend class on the Buddha and his Dhamma. We begin with our Pali chanting. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So we were looking at the book 2, and as some of you are following up the classes and joining regularly, we know that we are now looking at the section 4 of the part 4 of the Buddha and his Dhamma. And we have been studying how the Buddha has been trying to teach his doctrine or his understanding or his Dhamma to the people all over possible. And we have seen that Buddha has been called by his family to visit Kapilavastu, and he was like on a conversion campaign in the city of Kapilavastu. And we have seen that a lot of people have responded to Buddha's Dhamma, Buddha's teaching, and they have joined the Buddha Sangha. And even the royal family of the Shakyas, they joined the Buddha Sangha. And now we see that when Shuddhadhan, when he came to know that Siddhartha or the Buddha is not going to stay now in Kapilavastu or the Sakyan kingdom, he is going to leave. He was very sad, and he thought, like, any father will think that his son should say stay back in the kingdom. So the section number 4, last attempt to make him a householder, I think is a very interesting section also from many perspectives, because here we are going to see how another effort was made to make the Buddha stay back as a householder. So the verse number 1, of course, goes on saying like this: Suddhodana wept bitterly at the thought of his son going away, never to be seen again. Then, this Suddhodana spoke to his counselor and his family priest and asked them if they could go and persuade his son to stay back and join the family. So there is this discussion between the priest of the family and the Buddha, which is also, I think, very interesting in terms of the bid of Suddhodana to try to convince Siddhartha to stay back. So I'm straightforward going to read as to what Prince is asking the Lord. He's saying like this, the verse number 6. "O Prince, consider for a moment the feelings of the king, with his eyes raining tears, with the arrow of thy separation plunged into his heart. He has asked you to come back home. It is then only that he can die peacefully." So Shuddhodana is an old man, and he is at the verge of his death. And that's how Prince is trying to emotionally convince Siddhartha Gautama to stay back. "I know that thy resolve is fixed upon religion, and I am convinced that this purpose of thine is unchanging. But I am consumed with the flame of anguish like heart at thy going into this homeless state. Come, thou who love duty, abandon this purpose for the sake of duty." So he is now playing on the theme of a duty, trying to convince the Buddha on the basis of his duties. "Enjoy for a while the sovereignty of the earth." He says, "Be a king and enjoy your sovereignty. Thou shalt go to the forest at the time provided by the Shastras. Do not show disregard for thy unhappy kindred. Compassion for all creatures is the true religion." He's playing on the words like compassion, saying that have compassion for your father, have compassion for your kinfolk, and so on. The verse number 10, he says, "Religion is not wrought out only in the forest. The salvation of ascetics can be accomplished even in a city. Thought and effort are the true means. The forest and the badge are only a covert sign. The king of the Sakyas is drawn in a deep sea of sorrow, full of waves of trouble. springing from thee. Do thou therefore deliver him who is helpless and protectorless, like an ox drowning in the sea. Consider also the queen who brought thee up, who has not yet gone to the region inhabited by Agastya. Will thou not take some heed of her, who ceaselessly grieves like a cow that has lost her calf? Surely thou wilt succor thy wife for the sight of thee, who now mourns as a widow, yet with her lord still alive, like a swan separated from her mate, or a female elephant deserted in the forest by her companion. The Lord, having heard the words of the family priest, reflected for a moment, knowing all the virtues of the virtuous, and then thus uttered his gentle reply. So, the reply of the Buddha is very important because the Buddha is also, as I told you, that the Buddha was utilizing every effort to communicate his teachings. So, now this is a setting where the family priest is trying to convince the Buddha to stay back again in Kapilvastu and not to go. He is saying that your father is sad, your mother is sad, and your wife is sad, and he's trying using various means, emotional devices to convince the Buddha. But the Buddha is already gone beyond the home life of householder. So these 11 verses we will reflect on, starting with first. I will know the paternal tenderness of the king, especially that which he has displayed towards me. Yet knowing this as I do, still alarmed at the ill and sorrow which pervades the world, I am inevitably forced to leave my kindred. He says that I'm aware of what emotions my father is going through, but I know that, and even knowing that, I know that the world is full of ill. It is at ill and full of sorrow. So I have to inevitably leave my people and go and serve the world. Who would not wish to see his dear kindred? He says, the Buddha says, who won't like to see their families? If but this separation from beloved one did not exist. But it's not that we are going to perpetually stay away with our families or with our parents or with our children, because one day we have to separate ourselves from them. But since then, even it has been once, separation will still come again. It is for this that I abandon my father, however loving. I do not, however, approve that you shouldn't think the king's grief as caused by me. When in the midst of his dreamlike unions, he is afflicted by thoughts of separations in the future. So he says that the sorrows of Suddhodana are not caused by me, because he has been dreaming about the union between him and me, and he's afflicted by the thought of separation in the future. This thus let thy thoughts settle into certainty, having seen the multiform in its various developments. Neither a son nor kindred is the cause of sorrow. This sorrow is caused only by ignorance. So you see, like as I said, that Baba Sahib Ambedkar gives a lot of clarity to the Buddha's teachings. And we have seen that we have been talking about attachment, and of course, attachment and the desire is a cause of suffering. But here, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, through the mouth of the Buddha, has highlighted the point very, very interestingly, that this sorrow is only caused by ignorance. Because we are ignorant about the reality, that we think that we are perpetually going to live and never going to die, and our near and dears are always going to be with us, and we never think that the separation could take place, because the reality of death or the reality of change has not really taught us the lesson. Theoretically, we understand it on all different levels, but when it comes to really penetrating the sense of the world in terms of the law of change and law of constant impermanence, the Buddha is saying that the sorrow is caused only by ignorance, because we are ignorant. We don't know what is going to happen next. We hang on to something, we cling on to something like it is going to exist forever. So the verse number 5, Buddha says, since parting is inevitably fixed in the course of time for all beings, just as for travelers who have joined company on the road, what wise man would cherish sorrow when he loses his kindred, even though he loves them. Leaving his kindred in another world, he departs hither, and having stolen away from them here, he goes forth once more. Having gone thither, he goes elsewhere also. Such is the lot of mankind. What consideration can be liberated have for them, since from the moment of leaving the womb, death is characteristic adjunct. See, from the we are destined, our death comes with our birth, and this is very nicely put in verse number 7. Since from the moment of leaving the womb, death is a characteristic adjunct. Why? In thy affection for thy son hast thou called my departure to the forest ill time. There may be an ill time in one's attaining a worldly object. Time indeed is described as inseparably connected with all things. Time drags the world into all its various times, but all time suits a bliss which is really worthy of praise. Now, what I thought, I'm going to reflect on this verse number 8 because it's very deep, that we have to go at the bottom of this verse number 8. So we often talk about ill time and good time, and we talk about time. We say that this is not the time to do this, this is not the time to do that. So the Buddha says to priests that there can be ill time in one's attaining the worldly object. So we pursue worldly objects. For example, we want to buy certain things, we want to go certain places, and we have this desire to attain worldly object. And there can be the ill time or a bad time. But for practicing the Dhamma, for practicing the good in the world, we don't wait for the ill time or good time. Because time indeed, as the Buddha says here, is described as inseparably connected with all things. Time drags the world into all its various times. This is like a sentence which is difficult to understand, because the concept of time in Buddhism is very, very important, because according to some philosophers, even the concept of time itself is an ignorance, and the time itself is a great suffering, because our mind tends to think in terms of the past and future. We suffer. For example, our minds are all the time also, reflecting on the past or the future. We are worried about the future, what is going to happen in the next moment, or what is going to happen next year, what is going to happen in my life. So we are like all the time worrying about the future which has not yet arrived. We don't know what is the future, what there is, how will we be in the future. Or we were reflecting or blaming ourselves for the past. We hear this term that the past is causing so much trouble, and it's true that sometimes our past comes in our way of what we want to achieve. But reflecting on the past which is already gone, and the future which has not yet arisen, we forget the precious moment that is unfolding right in front of us. And therefore, the present time is the only time where we can touch the reality. So there are many Buddhist suttas where the Buddha says that be mindful of the present. So, for example, we cannot be mindful of our past mind or the future mind. It's not possible to be mindful of the past mind, because the past has already gone, and it's not possible to reflect or to speculate on the future. So what is happening right now? What is unfolding before us? What is that stuff that the present is made up of? The sounds that we are hearing, the screen that we might be seeing, or the thoughts that are going on in our mind, or the smells around us, or the touch that we feel. So these are all the constituents of the present moment. So the Buddha is saying that you can talk about ill time or good time for the worldly objects, but when it comes to practicing the purity of your mind, all the time, every moment is the attempt, is the moment that suits. And this last sentence is very profound. But all time suits a bliss which is really worthy of praise. So Buddha is not talking about an ordinary bliss. Buddha is talking about the bliss that is worthy of praise. That means the bliss of Nibbana, the bliss of freedom, the bliss of that mind which has gone beyond its own self. And in that mind, there is not even a concept of a self. It's a mind which is boundless. It is not restricted. It is not confined by any narrow ideas like a nation, like a caste, or race, or religion, or any of these binding conceptual frameworks. So I think we as a Buddhist, and there is a very beautiful parable in the Milind Prashna, where Nagasena tells the King Milinda about the circularity of time. That the time, it's very difficult to find the beginning and the end of the time. He says that it's very difficult to find the beginning and the end of the circle. Likewise, it's very difficult to find the beginning and the end of time. And there are a lot of after the Buddha, a lot of philosophers came, and they discussed, they tried to understand the concept of time. But here, I think for us, the verse number 8 is enough to understand what it is all about. So I'm going to reread the verse number 8. There may be an ill time in one's attaining a worldly object. Time indeed is described as inseparably connected with all things. Time drags the world into all various forms. You see, this is a very profound sentence. Time drags the world into all its various times and various forms. But all time suits a bliss which is really worthy of praise. This in the previous discussions, we have seen that all the moment are the possibilities for us to go towards the bliss of Nibbana. There is not a suitable time. Every moment we can escape. It's our choice whether we want to go through the same cycle of the mental states that we have been going through, or whether we want to break through that cycle and let our mind to go further on this path of liberation. So this opportunity is available to all of us every moment. That's what Baba Sahib Ambedkar has taught in the previous sections of the Buddhist Dhamma. Now 9, that the king should wish to surrender to me his kingdom. This is a noble thought, well worthy of a father, but it would be an improper for me to accept it, as for a sick man through greed to accept unwholesome food. So you see, Buddha is comparing the offer of the kingdom with the unwholesome food. He says, I don't want it. How can it be right for the wise to enter royalty, the home of illusion, where are found anxieties, passion, weariness, and the violation of all right through another's service? The golden palace seems to me to be on fire. The daintiest viands seem mixed with poison. Infested with crocodiles is the tranquil lotus bed. So these images are very, very powerful. The Buddha compares the golden palace with the image of fire, and we have seen that Buddha often talks with this metaphor of fire. He says that how the world is on the fire with the greed, hatred, and delusion. Sabam aditang, everything is on the fire. Kena agina, which fire? The raga gina, moha gina, and dosa gina. The fire of the raga, dosa, and moha. And here, similarly, the Buddha is comparing the life of the palace with that of the fire and that of the poison. And he compares it that it's like a tranquil lotus bed which is infested with crocodiles. So even beautiful, how beautiful is the lotus bed, but if it is infested with the crocodiles, it's dangerous. It might look beautiful on the top of it. All the lotuses are blossoming in that water body, but if it's infested with the crocodile, it's very dangerous. It's not safe. It's not secure. So the minister is again trying to convince the Buddha, and he is resorting to a lot of his, I would say, emotional ploys to convince the Buddha. And he's praising the Buddha, and he's involving in a lot of this what I would say persuasion. He's trying to persuade the Buddha. So I'm not going to go again through what the minister says, but I'm going to read the Buddha's verses, the reply to priest, and we will reflect on that. So I'm going to skip reading the section number 6, the minister's reply, that you can very well read. It's available in the book, and there is nothing much to reflect on. But let's look at what the Buddha says. Then, having heard the affectionate and loyal words of the minister, who was an eye of the king, firm in his resolve, the king's son made his answer with nothing omitted or displaced, neither tedious nor hasty. So this is the characteristics of how the Buddha will respond. This is the characteristic of how Buddha communicates. He omits nothing and he displaces nothing. He is not tedious. He is not hasty. So we can understand how the Buddha's communication is. He is not in the haste, or he is not even slow, clumsy. He will speak to the point. That is what Baba Sahib Ambedkar is trying to say about the Buddha here. So verse number 2, this doubt whether anything exists or not is not to be solved for me by another's words. Having determined the truth by asceticism or quietism, I will myself grasp whatever is the truth concerning it. This second line is, I think, what is, I would say, the fundamental principle of the concept of freedom. Because most of the times, the ideas in our mind are borrowed by others. The philosophies that we so much cling to are not ours. They are not experienced by us. They are not known by us. We are like parrots, parroting the concepts, the thoughts, the words of other people. So whatever there is, whether the word exists or not, or anything exists or not, is not to be solved for me by another words. Having determined the truth by asceticism or quietism, I will myself grasp whatever is the truth concerning it. He says that the truth is not private to somebody. I'm not going to live on the borrowed ideas. I'm going to find the truth for myself. Actually, Buddha has already found the truth for himself. But for the sake of understanding this dialogue between the priest and the Buddha, I think this verse number 2 is so powerful, because previously the minister tries to convince the Buddha giving the example of other people. So, for example, he talks about Ambarish, Drumakesha, Rama, and others. Not this Rama. There are many Ramas. It's a common now in that period of time. So the Buddha says that whatever truth there is, I will find it out for myself. I'm not going to rely on the others' words. I'm not going to accept whatever others says. It is not for me to accept a theory which depends on the unknown and is all controverted, and in which involves 100 prepositions. What wise man would go by another's belief? Mankind is like the blind directed in darkness by the blind. You see, this is the speciality of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, that in the Buddha and his Dhamma, he is like giving us directions as to how the Buddhist life can be lived. And this verse number 2 and 3, even if we reflect on again and again, we are going to derive a lot of meaning for our lives itself. Particularly how to become self-dependent, not to rely on the other people's thought, not to rely on the borrowed ideas, not to parrot the same thing that people have been parroting again and again, because we like those concepts, because they suit our purpose. We tend to agree with that. But here the Buddha is saying that no, it is not acceptable to me a theory which depends on the unknown and is all controverted. So any theory that depends on the unknown is not acceptable to me. I think this is a very profound sort of a statement of the Buddha. So, there are like theories in the world all around which talks about unknown. If you ask somebody what is the God, they will tend to answer it that we don't know, but there is. There is something, there is some highest power, there is some supreme agency. But if you ask what is that, nobody says. They say, it goes on to the limits of knowledge, they say, and they say that it's unknown. So the Buddha's simple answer to that is that what you cannot pursue through your mind, through your senses, how do you know that exist? If that thing which you are talking about cannot be, established through the senses or through the mind, how do we know that that thing exists? So the Buddha says that it is not for me to accept a theory which depends on the unknown and is all controverted, and which involves 100 prepositions. There are 100 assumptions. There are hundreds of assumptions. These, that. What wise man would go by another's belief? Mankind is like the blind directed in darkness by the blind. This image is very important for us to reflect on, and this image is always talked about in many of the uh, what we can say philosophies also, about a blind man leading a blind man. So we know the story of the blind man. The Buddha has once there was a Brahmin who went to the Buddha, and he was claiming that they came from the Brahma. So Buddha asked him whether you have seen the Brahma. He says, no, I have not seen the Brahma. Then he asked whether your father has seen the Brahma. He said, no, my father has not seen the Brahma. Then he asked whether your father's father has seen the Brahma. He says, no, my father's father has not seen the Brahma. And it goes on up to the seventh generation, the traditional seventh generation. And the Buddha says, if nobody has seen, it's like blind leading the blind, isn't it? So it's not just about that, but in our communities also, we tend to see that sometimes a person without vision is leading the people, and then it becomes a complete maze. So the Buddha talks about the society in terms of blind directed in darkness by the blind. It's a very powerful image. Not just blind directing the blind in the light, but in the darkness. There is all darkness. So we can imagine how much weighty the darkness is around us. And we have seen that the Buddha has compared his awakening to the light. Baba Sahib Ambedkar said that the Buddha has brought new light, and we have this image of awakening and enlightenment. It's about light. It's not about darkness. So fourth, and it's very interesting, but even though I cannot discern the truth, yet still, if good and evil are doubted, let one's mind be set on the good. Even a toil in vain is to be chosen by him whose soul is good. So he says that even if I cannot find the path to the truth, for example, I need to set my mind on what is good. And we all know in the minds of our minds what's good. That, not to be very excessively greedy, not to be arrogant, not to be full of ego, are all evil things. But we know that the life of compassion, life based on Maitri, life based on Karuna, life based on servicing to others, to be at service to the suffering humanity, is a good life. So here the Buddha says, even a toil in vain is to be chosen by him whose soul is good. So don't go for the word soul like that. It's just for the understanding. It's a linguistic ploy. Now somebody will say that Baba Ambedkar has talked about soul here. It's categorically denied. It's a word just to say that, just to allude to the personality. But having seen that this sacred tradition is uncertain, know that only is right which has been uttered by the trustworthy, and know that trustworthiness means the absence of fault. He who is without faults will not utter an untruth. So you see, why do we utter untruth? Because we are at fault. We want to hide something. We want to have something for us. And that's why we utter the untruth. And therefore, the Buddha says here that having seen that this sacred tradition, so Buddha is now denouncing the sacred tradition, is uncertain. But know that only is right which has been uttered by the trustworthy. So who is the trustworthy? Because this word comes into Buddhist literature again and again. Who is the trustworthy? Who do we believe? How do we believe? And the whole range of sutras like Kalama Sutra, and there are other important sutras which talks about the trustworthy people. and know that trustworthiness means absence of faults. You see this logical development of the ideas in the way Buddha expounds. He says that sacred tradition is uncertain, but okay, we can believe the words of the trustworthy people. But who are the trustworthy people? Trustworthy people are those in which there is no fault, and who is without fault will not utter an untruth. And as for that, thou said to me in regard to my returning home, the examples you give are no authority. So a lot of authorities are given by the priest to the Buddha, saying that you should return to your home because such and such person has done in the history, such and such person has done in the history. The Buddha says that the examples you give are no authority, for in determining duty, how can thou quote an authorities those who have broken their vows? Even the sun therefore may fall to the earth, even the mountain Himavat may lose its firmness, but never could I return to my home as a man of the world, with my senses only alert for external objects. How profound, how deep that is. See the sentence, with my senses only alert for external object. So he says that the worldly life is okay, but it's just about attending to the external objects, only alert for external objects. So he says his resolution is firm. He says that whatever happens, sun may fall on the earth or mountain Himavat may lose its firmness, but never could I return to my home as a man of the world, with my senses only alert for external objects. So there are, of course, external objects like sounds, sights, smells, and etc., etc., etc. The sensual objects. But there are also internal objects, the objects of mind, which we call the Dhamma. And the objects of mind, for example, includes the destructive emotional states and the constructive emotional states. So Buddha is saying that, there is also another word that needs to be attended, and that is our internal world. I would enter the blazing fire, but not my house with my purpose unfulfilled. Rising up in the accordance with his resolve, full of disinterested, he went his way. Then the minister and the Brahmin, both full of tears, having heard him, his firm resolve, determination, and having followed him a while with despondent looks and overcome with sorrow, slowly returned to Kapilavastu. Through their love for the prince and their devotion to the king, they returned and often stopped looking back. They could neither behold him on the road nor yet lose the sight of him, shining in his own splendor and beyond the reach of all others like the sun. Having failed to persuade him to return home, the minister and the priest went back with faltering steps, saying to each other, how shall we approach the king and see him who is longing for his dear son? So here we complete the part 4 of the book 2 of the Buddha and his Dhamma, and we have seen that this part 4 has been a very interesting sort of Buddha's journey, because just after his enlightenment, he has many disciples. Like we have seen, there were Kassapa brothers. In total, they were 500. Then Yasaya and his friends. Then 5 Parivrajak, Sariputra and Moggalayan. So we can imagine that Buddha with a lot of his disciples had gone to Kapilavastu. And having gone to Kapilavastu, he has also taught his Dhamma to his father, the people of the Sakyan kingdom. And we have seen that the Sakyans decided to leave. Even the king of the Sakyans, Bhaddiya, decided to leave his home, and Anuruddha left his home, and Mahanama and Ananda, and so on and so forth. So we can see that the Buddha had already was in a process of gathering a lot of disciples, and as per the new sort of understanding of the history, the Sakyans had connections with a lot of places throughout the Indian subcontinent. In the Gandhara, they had connections. Their people had gone and settled in Gandhara. They have gone and settled in different parts. There were big empires like the empire of Magadha and empire of Kosala. They were big empires, and they had contacts with people from all over the places, because they were the big kingdoms. And there were the small republics like the Republic of Sakyans and Lichavis and so on and so forth. So what we are looking at is a world which was very dynamic that time. So imagine that when the Buddha is on this on his way to convert people, and he's teaching his Dhamma, the word was spreading like a fire. That there has emerged a Buddha who is teaching his truth, his doctrine to the people. And as Buddha was gathering a lot of people around him, his Dhamma was reaching all over the places. Imagine that the royal family is getting converted. Bimbisar is, influenced by the Buddha, and it is said in the history that Bimbisar sent his neighboring kings the gold plates with the symbol of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, and some of the teachings of the Buddha written on the gold plates to the kings around him. Particularly to one king in Gandhara, he sent one golden plate as a gift, and there the Three Ratna were celebrated, and the Buddha's doctrine was written. And immediately, his name is Pakuddi, he was converted to Buddhism, and the king of Gandhara renounced his house and become a monk. Similar is the story of another king having reflected on the Dhamma, having understood the Dhamma, that they renounced their royal thrones and become the bhikshus. So we can imagine that this what Baba Ambedkar is trying to do through this part is to make us understand that the Buddha didn't stay at one place. He was always on the move. He traveled widely. He went all over the places in order to teach, because after his enlightenment, he saw that there are some people who are having very less dust in their eyes, and they can see. There are a lot of people who might not be able to understand what I'm trying to say, but there are people who can understand my teaching, isn't it? So he has went all over the places. He walked from Rajagruha to Kapilavastu. It's not a small distance, and Buddha was walking on his feet with his retinue of the people. So you imagine, you throw your mind to the ancient India, where the Buddha is walking with, say, hundreds of his disciples on the streets, maybe Uttarapatha, that was a highway of the time, walking with his disciples. And then they are staying in some places every day. Then people might be coming to offer them food, and the Buddha might be giving the discourses to them. You imagine the scene, and you imagine that how after his enlightenment at the age of 35, till Buddha had attained to Mahaparinirvana at the age of 80, and till that long life, 45 years of his majesty, every day he taught, and whoever he met, he taught. Whatever Buddha said was the Dhamma. He never talked any frivolous talks, or he never talked any useless things. All his things were 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 told to help whoever around him to march upon that road of enlightenment. So the idea that the Buddha has turned the wheel of the Dhamma is so potent and profound, that Buddha indeed has set in motion the wheel of the Dhamma. And the Sakyan people, the royal families of the Sakyan, the people, the families which favored the Buddha, they sent one male member of their family to the Buddha Sangha. It was a custom in the Sakyan kingdom. That's why Buddha is also called the Sakya Singha, or the Sakya Muni, the Muni of the Sakyans. So Sakyans has rendered their all out support to the Buddha. And we can imagine that, this Buddha has gone very early on in Kapilavastu to spread his teachings. So I think there is a lot to take from this section, and these sections in this part 4, and we will be looking at the part 5, which is also another very interesting sort of a part, and then we will go on to finishing our part, the book 2 of the Buddhism. So I open here for the discussions and whatever comments you have today.
Verse number 8.
Verse number 8, yes.
There may be an ill time in one's attaining a worldly object. Time indeed is described as inseparably connected with all. So I want to believe that there can be ill time when we want to gain worldly object. We go behind the worldly object because suddenly, if we remember some bad event in our past life, then suddenly our mind goes in past. And then likewise, if we remember something else, then our mind goes in future. But Buddha says, but there is no, there is always suitable time for achieving Nibbana.
Yes. Yes.
So time drags the world into all its various times.
Yes.
I think this is the meaning of
Yes.
this verse 8.
Yes. Yes. There is a very nice Pali Sutta that if you are all interested in, you can read. Bhaddekaratta Sutta, where Buddha talks about how to make your every moment an auspicious moment. And he says that when you are mindful in the present moment, that's an auspicious moment. So for a person who is on the path of the Dhamma, who is trying to attain enlightenment, who is committed to seek good, there is no good time or bad time. All the moments are the potential moments to cultivate something good. And according to Buddha, if we cultivate like this all the time, every moment is an auspicious moment. So there is not ill time or a good time. Every moment is an auspicious moment. So it depends on what we are trying to do with the time, whether we are trying to squander the time or whether we are trying to utilize the time, because time is slipping from our hands like this. And we cannot hold the time. It's like trying to hold the sand. And the more we try to hold the sand, the more it passes away. As we are speaking, the time is flowing, whatever I said 2 minutes back is already past. It's gone, isn't it? So, this is very interesting, this thing that we always say that, this is my bad time. I'm going through a bad phase. But even if that moment, if we try to make efforts to cultivate our mind in the right direction, that becomes an auspicious time. So whether it's a good time or bad time depends on our attitude.
Yeah, this is also there, that Buddha was always trying to whatever the existing system was there, that seeing auspicious time, waiting for that. Okay, so Buddha want to hit at that particular thing and teach the people that there is nothing like auspicious time. Wherever you start for doing good thing, that becomes your auspicious time. Because in Hindu culture or Vedic, that time Vedic culture was there. So and everywhere people were dominated by that philosophy. So Buddha wanted to take out from that ill things. So I think that might be the reason, because everywhere we find that Buddha has said, don't commit violence. So because violence was there, don't commit theft, because theft was there. So it was at particular time, these things were there, and Buddha wanted to take out the people and bring them on the right path. So that also might be there.
For example, you are sir. Okay, anybody?
Yes, please.
Yes, please go on.
I actually wanted to reflect, sir, on this last section, Buddha's determination, point number 3.
Okay.
It is not for me to accept a theory which depends on the unknown and is ill-coverted, and which involves 100 prepositions. What wise man would go by another's belief. Mankind is like the blind, directed in darkness by the blind. So here, sir, Buddha attained the enlightenment, and here he's saying this. Obviously, after enlightenment, he's wise and he's saying this. But if we see, when he was gaining the teachings of Alar Kalam and Uddak Ramput, and after getting teachings from them, he realized, he has self-realization that he didn't got solutions to what he was searching for. So in our day-to-day life also, we give so much importance or authority to some person that we self-doubt ourselves sometimes. That, yeah. So just I wanted to say this point that just like Buddha, before gaining the enlightenment, he self-realized and he took his stand, and he himself decided to find his own meditation technique, and then meditate and do his own searching. So likewise, in our day-to-day life also, we should be self-reliant and not to give so much of authority and not to self-doubt so much on ourselves. That is what I wanted to reflect, sir. Obviously, after gaining enlightenment, we will be more wise, but still in the process which we are right now learning, still that time also we should be self-reliable on ourselves and should not doubt ourselves, our intelligence and our whatever thoughts we have, and should not give so much of authority and consider the another person being full enlightened and have so much of knowledge and all that things. That's what I wanted to reflect, sir. Thank you.
About the Himalayas, ill time and bad time, I think that's always there in the communities. Like people talk about, this is an auspicious moment, that's an auspicious moment. And there was a concept of division of time, that some part of your life you have to do this, some part of life you have to do that, some part of life you have to do other things. So this division, the Buddha didn't accept. So this division of so-called, there was an idea in the Brahminical world that time, not in the Samnik world, of the idea of, 4 ashramas. The Buddha says very categorically that to know the truth, there is no time, You can know the truth anytime. You should be committed to knowing the truth anytime. There is no time for being good. You cannot say that I do all the evils now, and at the end of my life, I will do something good and I will whitewash all my bad karmas. Isn't it? So this is very profound in a sense that the Buddha is trying to teach us that there is no good time or a bad time. Whatever where you are, where you are, that's the time where you should make efforts. And this theme of making efforts every moment is what is all about Buddhism. It's not about theoretical, theory. It's not about presuppositions. It's not about cramming so many ideas in our brains about the theories. It's about doing good in the world. And that's what the Buddha says, when he summarizes his Dhamma, he doesn't summarize it philosophically. He says, Sabba papasya karnam, kusalasya upasampada, sachitta pariyodapanam etang buddhana sasanam. Okay, do no evil. This is very profound in a sense that there are a lot of speculative philosophies around us. There are a lot of speculative religions around us, and they don't let us question them. The Buddha says that everything is questionable, including his Dhamma is questionable. You should explore, you should know, you should test, you should experiment with it. You should find out for yourself whether it works for you or not, whether it's true or not. We don't have to, we cannot borrow the words of others, even if they tell you that, and if the speaker is good speaker, even the speaker is an authority, we cannot accept it unless we know it by ourselves. And Buddha says there are only 2 tests by which we can know whether certain things are good or bad, whether it's beneficial to us and whether it's beneficial to others. So anything that we do can be mapped with these 2 standards, whether it's good for me and whether it's good for others. And if it's good for you and whether it's good for others, you do it. And when you do it, that's what is the Dhamma all about. Sabba papasya karnam, doing no harm to yourself and others. Kusalasya upasampada, doing good to yourself and others. Cultivating your own mind. This is what is the Buddha's teaching. Very simple, very straightforward, but very difficult to practice. So I think, this concept of ill time or good time is very, very wonderful. And it also speaks about the independence that we all need to have. The independence to think, the independence, the freedom to, have your own thoughts, which are clear in themselves. And we should all strive for attaining that original thoughts, that original mind, that originality or in our thinking. So I think that's very interesting sort of what the Buddha says. And of course, coming to Samiksha's point, the theories and all, they are there. There are a lot of theories, and we know that the theories are not sacrosanct. They change. Like the theories in the physics, they have undergone radical changes over the period of time. The theories in biology, they have undergone these things. So theories are not fixed. They are not final. We have to test them. Every theory has to be backed by the evidences. So if the evidence say otherwise, the theory change. And sometimes there are paradigm shifts in the theories because the evidence found is so profound that it changes the theory altogether. So theory and practice both go hand in hand. They cannot be separated. You cannot just have a theory and no practice. Good, Pankaj?
Mangesh sir, this just out of curiosity, I am asking this question, like your background and what we are reading, the golden place, the golden palace seems to be set on fire, the that is weird, seem to be mixed. These are the images. So you traveled so many on the caves, so many Buddhist sites. So these stories are told through the stone there, means something.
Yes. See, Buddha is not like rejecting the exterior world. He's not rejecting the external words. He's not saying that the world is you don't have to indulge into the world. He's not saying. What he's saying is that there is something higher to cultivate. There is something which is very profound to cultivate, and that's your mind. Because at the center of everything is our mind. If there is no mind, there is no experience. So the fundamental premise of the Buddhism is that there is a supremacy of mind. So as you reflect more on your mind, as you refine your mind, as the mind becomes more cultured in the Buddhist sense, not in that anthropological sense, when your mind becomes more creative, more deeper, more subtle, then that mind has this expression. It expresses. So it expresses through the literature. So you see that there is a profound literature in Buddhism. The way the Buddhists have written, the poems, the whole literature is so profound and is so liberating. Like, for example, Therigatha. So now when it comes to the arts in Buddhism, it's a wonderful topic. You see, if you see the background of my image, what I put forth, and I have been visiting all these beautiful caves and studying them. You just look at the image which is behind me now, which is my backdrop. So actually, I'm looking at this particular Buddha from the first floor in Verul. This is the photo I took. These both photos I have taken. Okay, so this kind of a creativity, this kind of a profound sense of beauty, you can imagine how beautiful the mind of the Buddha would be. How deep the mind of the Buddha would be, how enlightened the mind of the Buddha would be. Let's just imagine Baba Sahib Ambedkar and his sense of beauty, his sense of aesthetics, his sense of seeing the world, his sense of converting the world for other people so that they can benefit from his creation. You see what I'm getting at? So, this like, for example, now this the background that you are looking at, the Buddha is sitting in a particular position. You can't imagine that this was carved in a single stone. This whole cave is carved in a single stone. You see the arches behind. They are in the stone. The pillars. And at one point of time, there was a large, use of the wood. And there were colors. So we have no idea when this was colored, how it looked.
True, sir. What answer, sir? Beautiful answer. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. No,
you see, we are just seeing stones today. But at one point of time, the Buddhists were so, learned, and they had mastered this art and science of colors and sculpting and so on and so forth. Most of these caves were colored. And we can see even today we see they were not like this dry, drab, black and white. And they were not dark as we see today. They had a mechanism to bring light inside the caves by reflecting. So you see, wherever Buddhism has gone, any culture Buddhism has gone, it has given rise to a lot of creativity. The paintings, the music, the literature, the poems, sculptures, you name it, and you find it.
Well,
and after that time, after some time, they had also created what is called dyes, that we make for today. If we want to produce something, we make dyes. So in Gandhara, they found the dyes of the Buddha face, so they could replicate it.
Molds.
So we hardly know much about the Buddhist history even today. There is so much to be known even today.
Sir, there must be something, any book which is talking about Buddhist art or something.
There are plenty now, and we have to cultivate that interest because it's a very interesting area. The Buddhist arts and aesthetics. The Buddhists should, if the Buddhists were there, they would have made nice cinemas, the enlightening cinemas. They would have made the best websites like that.
True, sir. True.
And that's what we see in the Japanese culture, in the Chinese culture. They have this very profound ways of doing things.
Yeah. Creative mind, beginner's mind.
Yes. Sir, had the Takshashila and Nalanda University were not destroyed, then we would have more literature, Buddhist literature, isn't it?
Yes, in a way, we had lost a lot of these things, but they are not completely lost because a lot of these texts are available. And they are available in China, they are available in Tibet, they are available in Japan. Japan has organized all these texts. So we have these sutras, and when the sutras are there, we can bring back the civilization because that codex is there, that matrix is there, that DNA is there to recreate. But it will not be same like what happened in the past, like the caves and all. There will be a different expression of that creativity.
I'm having one doubt.
Sunil sir.
One doubt is there that Buddha has traveled a vast distance from Kapilvastu to Rajgir and Varanasi and all those areas. So towards the end of his life, there could have been some attempt because all those kings were in his support. Many kings. So towards the end of his life, he could have given some instructions to these kings to spread this Dhamma to other countries also.
For sure.
Because it took Ashoka and Kanishka to spread it to other countries. So are there any references that during Buddha's time also these attempts have been made?
Yes. Like as I told you that the Buddha's awakening and his spread of the Dhamma was like a revolution. There was nothing like that before the world. Before that in the world, what Buddha brought in the world was a light that was not there previously. And these kings were impressed. Bimbisar was impressed, and Bimbisar was a king of Patliputra. So he was the ancestor of Ashoka.
Yeah,
Magadha Empire. And we know that he was the ancestor of, then we have Bindusar, then we have all this series of people. So there was, of course, these kings had taken deep interest. Prasenajit had taken interest in the Dhamma. Bindusar, as we know, that he used to send the messages, the teachings of the Buddha written on the golden plates as a gift to another king, another emperors. And so yes, there was an attempt, and that's you see the Ashoka didn't come in the vacuum. There was a lot of background to it. And Baba Ambedkar says that any political revolution must be preceded by a social and cultural revolution.
Yeah, 4-5 generations were there before Ashoka.
Yes,
They were all in Buddhist.
they were all in Buddhist, isn't it? So there were sutras, there were like that, because we know that Ashoka gives the list of the sutras that needs to be studied. He is so much into Dhamma, he has such a clarity. And so we know that there were kings and there were a lot of influential people who had become the followers of the Buddha. If there is anything else, if not, then we will end our class today. And yes, Sushil.
Yes, Debbie, throughout your talk, you are talking about instill virtues, all good virtues, and cleansing of mind, and and throughout Dhamma, Buddha and his Dhamma, Baba Sahib didn't mention everywhere. I mean, that if you want to cleanse your mind and go deeper, what's good and what's not good. So, and throughout his book, he only mentioned once that about meditation practices, about vipassana and others. And everywhere I saw it, I watched, I actually learned it at every page or a couple of pages that he he wrote word. He actually repeated the word medicant. So may I ask you to expound about which method should adopt, because there are two school of thoughts that people are saying that vipassana is not good, and Baba Sahib didn't accept a sitting Buddha shutting his eye, and I want Buddha in walking position. So can we say that vipassana is not good for our community or large people and a lot of people to clean their mind and come out as a good person, and he can do good things for society, for the cause of society. So, and I think there is another in at the TBM, there is another way of how to meditate. So, what's your take on these methods?
See, sir, as we know that the Buddha Dhamma is very vast, and there is of course the Noble Eightfold Path, and we have had a long discussion on what is called the Samma Samadhi. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar has very beautifully explained what is the Samma Samadhi in that section of the Buddha Dhamma, which we have studied previously, and we can go back to that and refer it. The problem today, sir, is that a lot of people are involved in the discussions and the theories and the words. So I would say that there, as you rightly said, there are techniques, and there are many techniques in the Buddha in the Vishuddhimagga, or the book written by Dhammananda Kosami in Marathi, Samadhi Marga, which I'm sure Baba Sahib Ambedkar had access to and read. There he talks about 40 types of meditation, depending on what object of meditation you want to hold. And sometimes there is a huge lot of discussion on these techniques, and there are techniques in Japan and in Korea which talks about just sitting. And then there is a technique which is taught in the Burmese school, which is what known today as the Vipassana school. So basically, we have to understand two things here, sir, that Samma Samadhi is a critical part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar said that Noble Eightfold Path is nothing but Nibbana. How you practice the Nibbana. So I don't know what technique to propose, because that's your own take and what system of meditation one wants to follow, because there is also now the Tibetan system of meditation where there involves a lot of analytical meditation and visualizations and so on and so forth. As far as we are concerned, our premise is very simple, and anything that helps you to deal with the 5 hindrances. And Baba Ambedkar has talked about 5 hindrances, and very traditional teachings. It's in all the schools of thoughts. So I think the techniques are there, but the techniques are like for us to use them. They are not something that has to be like wore as a badge, like that's what happening in our community today, that people are wearing their techniques on their as badges and trying to talk to each other and saying that my technique is best and their technique is bad and my attitude is good and their attitude is bad. All this comes because these people have not understood the core and the vision of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. And because not understanding Baba Saheb Ambedkar and his Buddha and his Dhamma profoundly and clearly, these technique related confusions are coming in our communities. Number one. Number two is, this basic technique of that the Buddha taught, that we have to calm our mind. So we need a technique that calms our mind. So of course there are some, so-called quote unquote rituals that can also help us to calm our minds. Like even the simple act of lighting a candle before the Buddha every day is a very profound act. And reciting the Trisaran and Panchashil, that's what Baba Saheb Ambedkar used to do. In the morning after his bath, he would go to in front of the Buddha, light his candle and sit and chant his precepts, and so now what do we call it? Do we call it a technique or what? Is it vipassana or samatha? What is it? So we all need techniques by which we should be able to calm our minds. We all need that technique. So whatever technique you choose, it's your personal choice, but we all need something that will ground us, to use the the current words that goes on in the contemporary parlance, something that will anchor us, anchor our mind. And when our mind is anchored on something positive, that object has to be always positive, that cannot entice our emotions. So the neutral object that we can focus on is the breathing, isn't it? So we use the breathing as a medium to calm our mind. And once our minds are calm, we bring the object of inquiry into that calm mind, and we try to understand, to know that thing. And that knowing that with a calm mind is vipassana. Vipassana is seeing the way it is, whatever that there is, isn't it? So we need these techniques. But these techniques have a purpose to liberate our minds. But if these techniques themselves are making us slaves, then, I think we have to relook at that. So you are right, there is a lot of confusion about meditation and all. This word meditation is also very confusing because it's an English word. The original word in Pali is a bhavana. It's called bhavana. Bhavana comes from growth, to be. So there are two traditional bhavanas in the Buddha's teaching. One is chitta bhavana, where you cultivate your mind. So you cultivate your mind by not letting it go mad, or not letting it go elsewhere crazy. You try to focus your mind, and there are techniques to focus the mind. Okay, and there is another bhavana that the Buddha emphasized, that is metta bhavana, which is cultivation of love and cultivation of maitri for all that lives. So I don't think we have to these are all what vipassana or TBM, they have their sources are outside. They are not our sources. You see what I'm trying to say? The vipassana comes from the tradition of Satyanarayana Goenka. TBM comes from other traditions. We have, as a Ambedkarite Buddhist, think about what is our tradition, what kind of a Buddhism we want. And the source, the matrix of bringing back that the Buddhism that Baba Saheb Ambedkar wanted is the Buddha and his Dhamma. And then all these organizations and all these traditions are secondary to our purpose. They are not primary to our purpose. You see what I'm trying to say, sir? Sushil sir?
Yeah.
So always, as an Indian Ambedkarite Buddhism, it's our duty to know Baba Sahib's thought, Baba Sahib's vision, and to develop our own sort of understanding based on that. This will be like borrowed understandings.
Yeah.
And here
Very nicely you expounded what Baba Sahib actually expected from us, and we should go like that. Really, I actually was very much baffled and confused whether what people are, why they are criticizing each other. Those who are underwent vipassana, people are saying that he or she has severed his or her relations with society. They are there for themselves only, and other people are saying or criticizing TBM that they are not teaching what Buddha that time taught. And actually, it should not be there like that. And that's why what you have put forward now, that what Baba Sahib expected from us, we should go like that. Very much, I'm grateful to you to expound all these things. Thank you so much, Jabin.
Thank you, sir. And I think we should end our class today. And thank you all for joining in. See you next week on Saturday at 11 o'clock.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.